If Russia's recent actions and those now ongoing reflect a genuine commitment to defeat that organization, then we are prepared to welcome those efforts and to find a way to deconflict our operations and thereby multiply the military pressure on ISIL and affiliated groups. But we must not and will not be confused in our fight against ISIL with support for Assad. Moreover, we have also made clear that we would have grave concerns should Russia strike areas where ISIL and al-Qaeda-affiliated targets are not operating. Strikes of that kind would question Russia's real intentions fighting ISIL or protecting the Assad regime. Now, we have informed Russia that we are prepared to hold these deconfliction talks as early as possible this week. But let me be clear. The United States and the coalition will continue our ongoing air operations as we have from the very beginning. We have conducted a number of strikes against ISIL targets in Syria over the past 24 hours, including just an hour ago, and these strikes will continue. Let me be clear. The coalition that we have built, more than 60 countries strong, has been taking on ISIL for more than a year by liberating Sinjar Mountain, liberating Kobani, liberating Tikrit, where now more than 100,000 residents have been able to return to their homes and resume their lives, defending Mosul Dam, defending Haditha, protecting Baghdad, rescuing endangered minorities, killing ISIL leaders and facilitators, and taking away the entire northern border of Syria for ISIL east of the Euphrates River. At the same time, we have mounted a comprehensive campaign to cut terrorist financing, curb recruitment of foreign fighters, and expose the lies that ISIL is perpetrating. Today, as we speak, south of Kirkuk, Kurdish Peshmerga are heroically liberating villages from ISIL under the cover of coalition airstrikes. In addition, we continue to admire the courage and the resilience that has been demonstrated for 4 long years of struggle by the legitimate opposition to Assad. Let me remind this Council that coalition air operations are grounded in well-established military procedures, firmly based in international law, and the requests of neighboring states for collective self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. That foundation has not changed, and we will continue our mission with the full sanction of international law. Pursuant to these procedures in Syria over the past year, the coalition has now conducted nearly 3,000 airstrikes against ISIL targets, and we are now in position with France, Australia, Canada, Turkey, and other coalition partners joining the campaign to dramatically accelerate our efforts. This is what we will do. Over the coming weeks, we will be continuing our flights out of Incirlik Base in Turkey to apply constant pressure on strategic areas held by ISIL in northwest Syria. We will also be sustaining our support to anti-ISIL fighters in northeast Syria. These efforts will put greater pressure on ISIL's operational areas, and we will ensure through precision airstrikes that ISIL leaders do not have any sanctuary anywhere on the ground in Syria. So ISIL will soon face increasing pressure from multiple directions across the battlefield in Syria and Iraq. But as we have said from the start, and as the Geneva Communique codified, this fight cannot be won in the military sphere. It will require a political solution to the crisis of Syria. One thing is certain. The vast majority of states around this table know that the ISIL forces, ISIL itself, cannot be defeated as long as Bashar al-Assad remains president of Syria. It cannot happen by definition of the lines of this battle. It cannot happen because of who has lined up with whom and because of the nature of these protagonists. And the reason for that is defined in the beginning by how this fight itself began. This fight began when young people, young Syrians, looking for a future, wanting nothing more than opportunity and jobs and education, when they went out to demonstrate for the future and to claim the aspirations of young people. And Assad sent his thugs out to beat them up. The parents were outraged by the fact that their children demonstrating peacefully were beaten up. And they went out with their kids, and they were met with bullets. That is how this whole thing began. People in a country looking for a future who were instead met with repression, with torture, with gassing, with barrel bombs. Assad will never be accepted by those that he has harmed, never possible to become a legitimate leader in the future, never possible to lead a reconciliation nor a unification of a country. That could not happen until he makes clear his willingness to actually heal the nation, end the war, and decline to be part of the long-term future. Today, we must be focused on finding a solution that will stop the killing and lay the groundwork for a government that the Syrian people themselves can support. We know that the terrorists can neither unite the country nor govern it. We know that Assad can neither unite the country nor govern it. Neither extreme offers the solution that we need and want. What is more, our ability to develop a credible international political process would be a farce from the beginning, incredible enough that it won't stop people from fighting if it were perceived as a way to extend or strengthen Assad's hold on power. As President Obama said on Monday, the United States is prepared to work with any nation, including Russia and Iran, to resolve the conflict. But we must recognize that there cannot be, after so much bloodshed, so much carnage, a simple return to the pre-war status quo. My colleagues, the government of Russia has argued that we must support Assad in order to defeat ISIL. But the reality is that Assad has rarely chosen himself to fight ISIL. As the terrorists made inroads throughout large swaths of Syria and Iraq, raping, enslaving, and murdering civilians along the way, the Syrian regime didn't try to stop them. Instead, it focused all of its military power on moderate opposition groups who are fighting for a voice in Syria. Make no mistake, the answer to the Syrian civil war cannot be found in a military alliance with Assad. But I am convinced that it can be found. It can be found through a broadly supported diplomatic initiative aimed at a negotiated political transition, a transition that has been accepted by the Security Council, accepted by participants of the Perm 5, consistent with the Geneva Communiqué, which would unite all Syrians who reject dictatorship and terrorism and want to build a stable and united society. So in conclusion, I call on all concerned governments, including Russia, including Syria, to support a UN initiative to broker a political transition. Further delay is unconscionable. The opportunity is before us. And if we can succeed in marginalizing the terrorists in Syria and in bringing that country together, we can all of us together do exactly what this was set up to do, the Security Council and this institution. We can strike a huge blow against violent extremism, not only in Syria, also in Iraq, across the Middle East and around the world. And nothing would be more in keeping with the high purpose for which this council was created 70 years ago. And nothing would better serve the interests of the people that all of us represent. I hope we can achieve that. Thank you.
All right, so there is the Secretary of State, John Kerry, and from the tone and the words of grave concerns if Russia hits anything that doesn't have anything to do with al-Qaeda or ISIS in Syria, that they are ready, meaning the United States is for a de-confliction talk. Ambassador, it feels like this just got a lot worse than what it was when we woke up this morning.
Secretary of State Kerry has just made a devastating concession. He is conceding that there is a legitimate role for Russian military force in the Middle East, something we have resisted for half a century. I cannot underline how significant that concession is. Now, he says it's in connection with getting rid of the Assad regime, which is a point that the administration has made these last 4 years, that Russia will cooperate in getting rid of Assad. That's not going to happen.
No.
We now see Russia in a far stronger position, legitimized by the words of the Secretary of State.
Not just stronger, but stronger than us?
Not yet, to be sure. But I think the point Melissa made earlier, which now assumes importance because of what Kerry said, that he wants to be sure Russia's hitting ISIS or Al-Qaeda targets. I'll make a prediction. I don't think Russia got into this to defeat ISIS.
No.
I think it's there to strengthen the Assad regime. And I'll make this prediction for what it's worth. What the Russian coalition wants, ultimately, is to strengthen the Baghdad government under Tehran's dominance, strengthen Assad and Hezbollah, and then reach a modus vivendi with ISIS.
Wow.
So that they basically declare a truce, and then they can go on and do other things. Don't think these people aren't cynical enough to do it. Remember the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact before World War II, which divided up Poland. The Russians know exactly how to do this kind of thing.
So why are they better at this, Andrea? I mean, it just seems like this is politics like high grade.
Because Vladimir Putin, in the mold of all Russian leaders, cares about one thing and one thing only: the interests of Russia and restoring the power and respect that Russia lost during the Cold War. Unlike our president, that's all he cares about. But I do think that he does have a vested interest in defeating ISIS because they attack such an underbelly of Russia. We've seen the Chechens, the Dagestanis, but I do agree with you, Ambassador. It's not the top of his list. He has power, lust, and other motives atop the list. But I'm shocked right now that the White House has bungled this so poorly, and the response we got, Ambassador, seems like something out of the Bush administration. I mean, they're talking about a political solution in Syria. Well, what would that be? Because if Assad goes, then ISIS fills that vacuum, and why do we care if they have jobs or not? This is nation building.
This administration has felt for a long time that Russia would help ease Assad out of power. It was never accurate. It's not accurate today. There's no deal there.
Right.
I do think you're right that obviously the Russians have ample reason to fear Islamic extremism in their own country. That would be part of the Molotov-Ribbentrop deal. You stay out of Russia, we'll stay out of your hair. It's a cynical way of looking at things, but this is the Middle East, and we are dealing with Russia.
All right, we'll be watching this closely. And we will keep our eyes on the situation in Washington, D.C. as well to see how the White House reacts. The State Department is set to release a new batch of Hillary Clinton's emails as well today. This time, we're expecting to learn a lot about the lead up to the Benghazi attacks and the policy on Libya. What could it mean for Hillary Clinton's campaign? We'll ask the ambassador up next.